Today we're going to kind of go over what ESJ is, where it started, where it's going, what's required of you, and then what we're doing on your behalf. So with that, ESJ is a 501c5. We're a nonprofit membership organization, and our role is to help you comply with the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program as efficiently and inexpensively as possible. The ESJ Board of Directors is made up entirely of growers from the three main counties, Merced, Madera, and Stanislaus County, so you have lots of great representation from growers who dedicate their time to represent you. And to keep costs as low as possible, we have a great team of consultants from the Farm Bureau, from MLJ Environmental, and also our lawyer at Conway, Con & Soares. So ESJ history, we started in about 2003. That's when the State Water Board created the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. In 2004, the East San Joaquin formed with the same structure we have today. And the Board of Directors has served for many, many years to keep things in compliance, make things as easy as possible for you. So that was kind of the early days. Early in the East San Joaquin days, it was really about surface water. So if you were along a creek, a stream, a river, a waterway, canals, drain ditches, you had to join initially. And in 2012, a study came out of UC Davis, the Harder Report, that was all about nitrates and nitrates in groundwater in particular, and it became a very hot button issue in the state of California. And the Regional Water Board and the State Water Board took up the nitrate issue, and they expanded our governing document, the General Order, to include groundwater. So in about 2012, we had a whole bunch of new members join. So that's probably when many of you became East San Joaquin members. So 2012 to 2015, ESJ members joined with no back dues. In 2015, we started requiring back dues. So anybody that didn't join in that kind of 3-year grace period has to pay the same amount that everyone paid in the early years. So everyone is on the same paying field and playing field to keep it even for our members. In 2013, we had the first requirements of the East San Joaquin, and that was the farm evaluation worksheet and the survey. This is all about the nitrogen practices, irrigation practices, wells, just general irrigation and information about your farm. That was in 2013. In 2015, we had the first nitrogen management plan worksheet, so this was the first time we had that nitrogen management budget. In 2016, we had the other component of that, the Irrigation and Nitrogen Management Plan Summary Report. And also in 2015 was the Sediment and Erosion Control Plan. So anybody who's ever been required to do one of those, it's not everyone in the Water Coalition that came on in about 2015. We were kind of cruising, and in 2018, we had another general order update that was kind of precedential changes for all the Central Valley coalitions. And one of those things was incorporating irrigation into the nitrogen management plan. So a lot of things changed in 2018, but from a grower perspective, it just meant that your farm changed from a nitrogen plan to an irrigation and nitrogen plan. This is your board of directors. It's made up of 11 growers, PCAs, agronomists. We've kind of got a great representation from across the Central Valley. These guys and gals put in a ton of time to represent you, fight back on the issues, come up with the best way to comply, and keep that as inexpensive as possible. They spend a lot of time on the budget and making sure that we keep our costs as low as possible, and that's why you haven't seen a dues increase in several years. You also have a great staff and consulting team. So I'm from the Farm Bureau. Abby and Danelle up front are both from Farm Bureau. So you can come to any of the 3 county farm bureaus and get help on all of your requirements. We take a lot of pride in helping our growers as fast and easy as possible. We have a great technical consulting team in MLJ Environmental. They're out of Davis. They come out and do all of our sampling, ton of our report writing. They do so much on our behalf, and they are the best in the business. They do so much to keep us, kind of above the water. The Water Board doesn't question their work because it's so thorough and so good. So we have a great consultant that's working on our behalf. And also, we have Tess Denham as our lawyer. She works for Con, Soares, and Conway, and she is just absolutely fantastic. There's just not a smarter person to work on our behalf. So we have a great team that works on behalf of you. The value of your membership. The number one reason to be an East San Joaquin member or a member of any of the Central Valley coalitions is that anonymous reporting. And this is something that's been litigated to death. We've been in lawsuits since 2018, since that new order came out, and the environmental justice community really, really wants field level data with names and phone numbers, emails, addresses all attached. So they want personal information. Being a member of the East San Joaquin means that you don't have to give that personal information. Your data is submitted, and that's all anonymous, so they cannot track you down, from your reporting, which is easily our number one reason to be a Water Coalition member. But in that is you have a massive cost savings having an individual permit with the Water Board. The Water Board estimates about 25 times more expensive, so you are getting a pretty good bargain with the East San Joaquin, and you have a great team. You have a powerhouse staff and board of directors who work really, really hard to fight these regulations as they're coming out. So I know it seems like a lot often, but there's a lot of work going down at the state board, regional water board, and within the water coalitions to make things as easy as possible for our growers. So your requirements as an East San Joaquin member, you've seen the form, up on the screen. That's your member requirement checklist, and it talks about all the things that you are required to do. So you have member dues that are due on March 1st every year, a farm evaluation due every 5 years. You have an irrigation and nitrogen management plan summary report due on March 1st every year. Your nitrogen worksheet, that one stays on farm. If you've ever been required to do a sediment and erosion control plan, that one stays on farm as well. And then you get your nitrogen evaluation every year as well. And then the last thing is if you've ever been declared an outlier or you have a parcel that's on one of our affected waterways, you've probably gotten the groundwater or surface water management plan implementation plans, and these are really important documents and surveys that are required of some members but not all members. So your requirements come every year in the form of a packet that you get in the mail, or if you've selected to get your requirements online, you would have gotten an email, and that would have come out in October. I think October 27th was the date of the email. So check your email, check your mail, make sure you have your requirements. You probably just got your requirements reminder. So if you do not have your documents, give us a call, see us up front. We can send that out to you or email that out to you to make sure that you get them in time. So the nice thing is we offer it in a paper version. You can go ahead and complete that, submit it back into us. You can also log into our portal at any time, and we can get you that login information. On the portal, you can see everything you've ever submitted to the Water Coalition. So if you wanted to look back at past year's nitrogen plans, you can pay your member dues, you can update your acreage, you can complete your nitrogen plan. On years when we have a farm evaluation, you can do that there as well. So the portal is always available. And the nice thing about the portal is it saves money for all of our members because we're cutting down on data entry and a lot of the back end work that happens. And you can go back to the portal anytime. You can log in and you can see that your reports are 100% complete, that your dues are paid. So it's kind of an easy way to check and see where you're at on your Water Coalition requirements. Member dues have stayed the same for the last 4 years, I believe. We're at $5.50 an acre plus a $50 membership fee. Then the last part of that component is the dues related to the nitrate control program. So if you fall in the Turlock or Modesto subbasin up here, also Chowchilla, you've had an extra line item or an extra invoice that's come in, and this is all about that nitrate control program. Those are the three main components that make up membership dues. And the nice thing is that board of directors has worked so hard to keep those dues the same rate. So they have stayed the same for several years in a row, which is a big testament to them. And last thing I'd like to point out on this is there's kind of this little breakdown. It's also in your membership packet, but it's all about, kind of the categories that the fees go to. And you probably noticed that almost a quarter of your dues go straight on through to the State Water Board to pay for this program. So a lot of the dues that you're paying aren't even staying right here in the East San Joaquin. They're going up to Sacramento, and we don't have any say in setting those dues. So we like to point that out. And I guess one more thing is that every year we send out an acreage correction form, and that goes out on or around May 1st. And on this, you can see all of your parcels listed, your contact information. We ask you to update that and get it back to us by June 1st with any corrections. That is the basis for your upcoming year's dues. So what you submitted last May or June is what your invoice was based off of for 2024. So be on the lookout as that comes out. We can make any of those corrections and make sure we have a solid dues number that helps us with our budgeting, and it helps make sure everything is current for you. So be on the lookout for that form. The farm evaluation survey is one that you've done the longest, and it's the one that has all the check boxes about the management practices on your farm. They're due every 5 years. Our next one will be due in 2026. And then this is a pretty easy report. Everyone likes it because it's the one you can check no change on. So this one's not due for a couple of years. Coming up, that's due on March 1st. I know we use that date a lot, but it's an important date. So this is your irrigation and nitrogen management plan summary report. This one is due on March 1st. It can be completed on paper or online. You can give us a call. If you're going to give us a call to do your nitrogen plan over the phone, which we are happy to do, make sure you have your total amount of nitrogen applied, your yield, the year it was planted for all of your permanent crops, and a little bit about your management practices, and we can knock this out over the phone. This is due every year. It's always due on March 1st. And the Regional Water Board does a series of inspections, on-farm inspections for East San Joaquin members and all of the Central Valley members. They pick a handful a year, and it's based on people who do not submit their reports on time. So an easy way to get out of a water board inspection is to make sure that you are submitting your nitrogen plan on time. So give us a call. We have about a month before it's due, but March 1st is coming up, so make sure you work on your summary report. In conjunction with the summary report is the nitrogen management plan worksheet. And this is the worksheet. It's looked the same since the pretty early days here, but this is your plan, what you think you're going to do over the year. So when you're sitting down to work on your plan with your PCA at the beginning of the year, they would be able to help you fill this out. It's kind of what you think, the amount of nitrogen you think you're going to use. You kind of fill out the column that says recommended, and at the end of the year, you would go back in and put in your actual numbers. And so this is supposed to help you with your kind of plan for the year, and also to make it easier to complete that summary report because you've already completed all of the data on your worksheet. And last thing is that stays on farm. That does not come back into us. And then anybody who is along a surface water, one of our surface waterways, especially one of our sample sites, you may have gotten one of these in the past, and these are the individual surveys. Myself, Wayne Zipser, we come out, we meet with you on farm, normally you and your PCA. We talk about those management practices, especially these days about pyrethroids and pyrethroid applications along the waterway. So we are seeing exceedances in our waterways, and pyrethroids is our main culprit. It's our highest cost in our budget is related to surface water and pyrethroid exceedance findings. It's probably our number one way we could save money if we stop finding those exceedances. We can stop doing some of the extra monitoring and requirements. This has kind of been one of those things where the goalpost has changed over the years, and our trigger limits, the amount we can detect, is so small now. And there's only a few labs that can do it, and the prices are really high. So this has been something that we've been facing for several years now. Jen's going to go over this more in depth, but if you get one of these management plans for surface water, you'll get a letter in the mail. We'll come out, we'll meet with you. So if you have gotten this, give us a call. We'll get that scheduled. We'll come out, we'll meet with you. It's a pretty brief survey. It's good conversation about what's happening in our waterways. And then the other management practice implementation report is for groundwater, and this is anybody who's ever been declared an outlier. So if you get your nitrogen evaluation in your packet and you look, and it's kind of the one that has the bell curve, and you have a red dot, and you've been declared an outlier, you've gotten this report in the mail. We have you attend an extra meeting every year. They're online or in person. We have some in person as well, and you complete this extra management practice survey, and it's just an in-depth dive on some of the things that you're implementing on your farm. And then here has all the member meetings that are outlier specific or crop specific that are on the website now. We have almonds, pistachios, and walnuts, and we have sweet potatoes, silage, grapes, and peaches coming up this summer. So if you fall in one of those categories, stay tuned because we will have a video for you as well. But if you have this groundwater MPIR survey on your checklist, give us a call. We can get everything over to you and help you get this completed. I think we have about 34 outstanding. And then the last kind of part that brings back all this irrigation, nitrogen management is the certification on your plan. All growers are required to have a CCA certification or are allowed to self-certify. If you are interested in the self-certification class and you haven't gone through it yet, you can go to that top link, and it's also posted on our website. You can become self-certified there. It's a self-study course, so you can do it at any time, at any pace. Take the test. It's all online. If you've already completed that test, you're already self-certified, you are required to have some continuing education every year, and that comes in about 1 hour per year, or 3 hours every 3 years. There's a ton of continuing education classes available online, and you can go to that second link at the bottom. It's also on our website. But there's a ton of classes that you can take anytime. There's a bunch of live webinars, and there's also some in-person classes. All of that gets posted on the CDFA site. So if you were interested in either one of those, let us know. We can get you the link. If you are self-certified and you want to know how many hours you are, send us an email. We'll get you up to Nicole at CDFA, and she can help tell you where you're at and how many you need. So we've got a lot of great resources for continuing education. And if you've ever been required to do a sediment and erosion control plan, there's kind of a couple of things. The sediment and erosion control plan is kind of a living document. It lives on your farm, so we don't know if it's been completed or not, but it's kind of a one and done plan. So if everything stays the same on your farm, there's really no need to update it unless there is a change. So it's, you can get it done, kind of put it away, monitor, make sure everything is going well. It also requires that someone sign off on it, and so we have a list of people that can sign off on those plans on our website, or you can sign up on our website to do the sediment erosion self-certification course. It's available, we'll do it about once a year when we have interest in some people that are excited or would like to take that course. And then the self-certification for this is good for life, so there is no continuing education requirements. Once you are self-certified, you are certified to do your sediment erosion control plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen for a few minutes here.
Hi there, everyone. All right. I'm Jen. I'm with MLJ Environmental. The first thing I'm here to talk to you about is AR acceptable ranges. So really just kind of a high-level overview of what are they and where do they come from, how are they being developed, how will they be used, and what does it mean if your fields are above these ranges. So for the what and the where, A/R ranges are a new metric. They're still actively being developed, but they will be rolled out this year. So I just wanted, again, to kind of give you a quick overview of what we know right now so that when you see it later this year, it won't be the first time you've ever heard of it. When we do roll these out later, we'll also provide more information at that time, and of course, you can always reach out with any questions you have at any point in time. So again, it's a new metric. It's evaluating your nitrogen applied, which is the A, over your nitrogen removed, which is the R value. This data comes from your INMP summary reports, which, again, as a reminder, are due March 1st. One other thing I want you to think about when you're filling these reports out and you're entering your yield, which relates to your nitrogen removed, we really want to know how much nitrogen was removed off of your field. So how much did you harvest, which is not necessarily the same as the amount of that crop that was profitable. So kind of keep that in mind when you're filling these reports out. So the timing of everything, in 2018, when that new order revisions were approved, this is when the requirement was added. For the next 3 years after that, the coalitions worked with commodity groups to kind of develop a strategy on how they would develop these A/R acceptable ranges. And then in 2013, the work plan for how they would be developed was submitted, which brings us to now, where these ranges are currently actively being developed and calculated, and they will again be rolling out later this year. Okay, so how are they developed? There's going to be a range developed specific for each crop. The data is coming from existing data. A lot of it is coming from your INMP summary report data. It's also coming from a Central Valley-wide assessment of existing data, and then when needed, it's being supported by our agronomic studies. The reason that we're doing this is because we want these things to be achievable, and we want it to be realistic. So we're using real data from growers across a multiple of years, across a variety of growing conditions and different cropping systems in order to get the biggest data set that we can so that the information is realistic and achievable. How are they going to be used? This is going to be a new metric to determine nitrogen efficiency. Again, these details are still actively being worked out, but you can kind of think of it as something similar to your outlier threshold that you see with your nitrogen evaluation packets. So this will be used similar to that. One thing that's different is that those outlier thresholds that we've been using, they are calculated every year. These values will remain the same for multiple years and will only be reassessed every 5 years. So again, this will be used to compare your 3-year A/R ratio, your nitrogen applied over your nitrogen removed, will be applied to these new developed AR ranges. So this is what you've been seeing. This is what you see in your nitrogen evaluation packets. Katie hinted at it earlier, that the bell curve. It shows the distribution of how everyone who grew this crop, where they land on this curve, and then you have points along the curve that represent your fields. If you're past that dotted threshold, outlier threshold line, then you're considered an outlier. So what we'll have moving forward is that line will go away and will be replaced with the A/R maximum acceptable range. So what does this mean if your fields are above? Well, since this is going to be used as a new metric, it'll be used to help determine outreach for the coalition. It may mean that you'll have to fulfill additional requirements, such as a survey. But this is still in development, like I said, so we're not entirely sure what it means yet, and it's very possible that you won't have to do anything, that there will be no additional requirements. Again, once we have more information, we will let everyone know, but this will be coming later this year, so just, again, wanted to give you a heads up and give you a little bit of background information so that you've seen it before you see it in your packets. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Katie.
But the nitrate control program and CV salts. So CV salts is an initiative that was kind of started from the Irrigated Lands program and several dischargers in the Central Valley. And this is a requirement in our order that we must belong to this group. And it's to work closely in a collaborative manner to create a comprehensive Central Valley salinity management plan. So this really started because of salinity in our groundwater, surface water, and how to deal with that. And then kind of in that 2012 range, we keep talking about that harder report, but that shift to nitrates in groundwater also affected kind of the trajectory of the CV salts program. And so a big part of that became the nitrate control program. And so the whole purpose of this group is to work to maintain a sustainable valley lifestyle, economic growth, retain a world-class agricultural economy, which is, of course, our very most important fact. And then we're working on water supply, and then, of course, in our environment. So these are all the kind of points that around the CV salts program and what we're working to do. But viable salinity and nitrogen management plan for the Central Valley is really the purpose of the CV salts program. So, it's been going on for several years. And on the bottom is kind of the trajectory here for our salt control program. And so we're kind of in the early phases here of some studies, some different things that are happening around that salinity portion. And in the top is the nitrate control program. So you see priority 1, 2, and 3. We're just at the start of that priority 2. So priority 1 was really the initial 3 in our area, Modesto, Turlock, and Chowchilla subbasins or management zones that you've been seeing on those extra lines in your invoice. This is our map that shows our current kind of Central Valley, some of those management zones that are in place. We're in the red there in Modesto, Turlock, Chowchilla, kind of right in the center. And in the next year, you're going to see Merced and Madera come on, and that'll cover pretty much the whole East San Joaquin region. So some of the things that have been happening with this nitrate control program, it's all about regulating nitrate discharges to groundwater from human activities. So it's been really hard to kind of put this program together and get the right players in the room. And this was all adopted in that 2018 General Order update. And the whole goal is to provide safe, free drinking water to residents relying on groundwater in those areas. So the nice thing about the nitrate control program is that more than just Central Valley agriculture pays into this, so more than just irrigated lands. So irrigated ag, dairy, you're seeing cities, wineries, any sort of discharge or anybody who holds a waste discharge order is paying into this program in addition to irrigated ag, which is a win for agriculture. You can kind of see this was implemented in 2001 for our red areas. We got our notice to comply in our orange areas, which would be that Merced and Madera, in December. So they will be joining into one of the established groups or creating one of their own. So Turlock and Modesto are covered by the Valley Water Collaborative, and Chowchilla is the Chowchilla Management Zone. Both have been great groups that have formed to help comply with this nitrate control program, building their own organizations and trying to save costs by bringing in several groups to write one report. So we've had a lot of great success of people coming together to comply with this organization, or this regulation, which is what East San Joaquin did in the early days as well. So current activities in the priority 1, so they're working on their early action drinking water plan, so making sure that there is drinking water deliveries going out to people. They're doing sampling. They have a couple of grants. They're working really hard on making sure that they are getting drinking water out to our communities. They have written their management zone implementation plan, which we call the MZIP. This was submitted in September of last year, and we're hoping that we will see a board hearing in about April of this year to see if those plans are accepted, and this will be kind of their long-term plan on what they're going to do in these management zones. So For instance, in Modesto and Turlock management zones, this is data from the Valley Water Collaborative. These are some of the numbers. So they've had about 1,200 applications for domestic well testing in our region. They've conducted just about 650 well samples, and they have about 500 people receiving bottled water delivery from this nitrate control program in the Modesto and Turlock subbasins. So again, these are like kind of the high-level goals of the program. It's drinking water solution, nitrate reduction, and a managed aquifer. And this is all stuff that's within our order, so we have to comply. We have to be part of these programs, and we've done it as inexpensively and collaboratively as possible to make it as easy for our growers to comply. And you'll kind of hear one more time, it's a sector-based program, so a lot of people are paying into this. Often it feels like irrigated ag gets targeted and it's just irrigated ag. But the nice thing is growers, dairies, wastewater facilities, cities, wineries, a lot of people are paying into this program. And it's been really collaborative in that manner as well. They are working on nitrate reduction goals, planning activities, scheduling things to get to that clean drinking water. There's just kind of a lot of things that are going into this program, reporting and other elements that are helping kind of on the back end that we're already doing within these programs. And with that, I'll turn it over to the last segment with Ms. Jen again.
All right, good news. This is the last segment because I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely a little chilly. So this is going to be your technical update looking at surface water and groundwater. I'm going to start off with groundwater. The coalition is required to have a groundwater quality trend monitoring program. This is to assess groundwater quality at a regional level in order to determine and evaluate the impacts of irrigated agriculture on the groundwater quality. In order to meet this requirement, the coalition has set up a monitoring network of 36 wells that are tested for nitrate annually. 24 of those wells are drinking water wells, 12 of them are observational wells, and then every 5 years, we have to monitor for additional parameters outside of nitrate as well. I think it's about 10 different things that we have to monitor for. Also, on a 5-year time step, we have to write a big report. It's a big trend assessment report, again, really looking at regional data and looking for groundwater quality trends over time and trying to tie that back in to see the impact of agriculture on groundwater quality. So here's a map of the well network. You can see each of these dots represents a well in the coalition, and it's really pretty representative of the whole area. The blue dots are your drinking water wells, and your yellow beige dots are your observation wells. So looking at recent nitrate results, this is what we found last year. The larger the circle, the more red the circle, the higher the level of nitrate. Those smaller dots, different colors, mean lower concentrations of nitrate. So we're not really seeing any particularly clear trend of nitrate being high in certain areas and not in other areas from year to year. But just kind of, again, a quick overview of just so you can see what we're finding in the area. And then I think we have, a more zoomed in map to look at the wells that we have in this area so you can kind of see what we're finding nearby. And quite a few of those wells are over the maximum contaminant level threshold, which is 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate, which at that point the water is deemed unsafe to drink. So the East San Joaquin has decided to participate in the Central Valley Groundwater Monitoring Collaborative, or the CVGMC. This is a group of 10 coalitions in the Central Valley that got together that decided it would be easier to meet these groundwater ILRP compliance requirements by getting together and pooling their resources. Some of the benefits of this is while ESJ has a network of 36 wells together, all of these grouped together, they have 273 wells that they are monitoring for groundwater quality. And they're sharing that data, which helps us streamline our regulatory reporting. Remember, I mentioned that every 5 years we have this big trend assessment report that we have to write. Well, this group writes it together. They share their data and they write one report that represents the whole area as opposed to each of the coalitions having to write their own report. So it's really cost-effective and really efficient way to meet the compliance requirements. Additionally, the emphasis again is really on a regional scale. So there's benefits from having access to a broader well network and having more data. And the goal is for the CVGMC to also kind of build in and work with CV salts because as you can see, there's a lot of different requirements from different directions from the regional and state board. So just a quick map so you can see the area that's covered by the CVGMC. The ESJWQC is the neonish color at the top. So you can see we're really representing a large area of the Central Valley by these 10 coalitions collaborating together. So now I'm going to move to surface water monitoring. While groundwater monitoring only happens once a year, for surface water monitoring, we collect every month. The coalition is divided into 6 zones, and within those zones, there are different sites that have been selected to be representative of each of those areas. There's 2 different types of sites. There's a core site, and there are represented sites. The core sites are where we go and we have to monitor for all of the required parameters. Represented sites are used only when we have known water quality issues to get a better understanding of what's going on for that specific issue. So what are we measuring when we go out there? We're looking at field measurements, so pH, salinity, flow, dissolved oxygen. We're looking at nutrients. How much nitrate is in the water? How much ammonia is in the water? What about phosphorus? Are we seeing bacteria? Are there high concentrations of E. coli? We're looking for metals. Do we see copper? We're also looking for pesticides. The way we determine pesticide monitoring is a little bit different because it's based on what we know as environmental risk and what we know for pesticide use applications. So when pesticides are applied, that information has to be reported. So we have an idea of when pesticide applications are happening, and we're able to time our monitoring based on when we think it's most likely that we might find the pesticides in the waterways. Finally, we're testing for toxicity. We want to see if what we're finding in the water is having an impact on the things that live in the water, such as the algae. So another map, here's the region. You can see each of those different colors represents a different zone. There's 6 different zones, and then each of those dots represents one of the sites. So zooming in a little closer to this area, this region is really represented mostly by zones 1 and 2. And the core sites, you can see I've called out for this year. I want to point out that the core sites rotate every 2 years. And we do this again to make sure that we're getting a good representation of the area. So what are we finding in the water? So these are some of the pesticides that we found in the surface water this past year. And these are the product names for what we're finding. So for herbicides, we're finding Shark, Roundup, Goal, Prowl. For fungicides, we're finding Bravo Weather, Nordex, Pristine, and then pyrethroids. I've broken the pyrethroids down into each of the there's 6 different pyrethroids that we're measuring for. And so you can see some of the different products associated with each of those chemicals, like Hero, Besiege, Asana, Warrior 2, Sniper, Reveal. And again, this isn't a comprehensive list of everything. I just tried to pick some of the ones that we see the most frequently. So there's been a big focus on pyrethroids, and I want to tell you a little bit why. So in 2019, there were new state board regulations that require us to monitor for 6 pyrethroids. The thing with the pyrethroids is that we're able to detect them at very, very small quantities. Additionally, the way we determine if there's an exceedance of the water quality trigger limit for pyrethroids is a little bit different. Rather than looking at each one of those 6 individually, we do an additive calculation. We have to add them together, and then we compare that to the water quality triggered limit. So when there is an exceedance, more than one exceedance of the water quality trigger limit in a 3-year period of time, it leads to management plan monitoring. Management plan monitoring is meant to try to determine the effectiveness of management practices that are being implemented by growers. So what does this mean? It means that we have to monitor more frequently, and we have to monitor at additional sites. What does this mean for you? If you're in an area that's being targeted for outreach, it'll mean a visit from Wayne or Katie. It means you'll have to fill out a management practice implementation survey. And we'll have to continue monitoring, this additional monitoring, until we're able to show that we're no longer detecting whatever it is that is of concern above those water quality trigger limits. So again, kind of coming back to pyrethroids, why do we care so much? So we started monitoring back in water year 2020, which starts October 1st, 2019. This is the very first year, and we were monitoring at 9 sites. By the end of that year, we had seen 11 exceedances of pyrethroids, which meant that we had 5 management plans. With those 5 management plans, it means that now we have to do additional monitoring. So now we're going out to more sites where we find more exceedances of pyrethroids, which then means the next year we have to go out to more sites where we're finding more detections, more exceedances. So you can kind of see where this is leading, which brings us to this next graph. So each of these bars represents an exceedance of pyrethroids over the course of the year. So in that first one you saw, there was not as many bars, right? But here, now we're seeing it's like 33 exceedances over the course of the year. This has brought us to the point where we have 22 sites that are in management plans, and then we're monitoring at 25 sites. A lot of these detections are pretty close to being just over the trigger limit for water quality. Some of them are maybe a little bit higher, but a lot of them aren't too much over that water quality exceedance limit. It's again able to detect these at really small quantities. So again, just a quick so you can see what's been happening just over the course of the past few years, where we started with just monitoring at 9 sites, and now we're monitoring at 25 sites, and 88% of those sites are in management plans. So yeah, this is a big cost for the coalition, having to do all of this additional monitoring for pyrethroids. So here's just a map of some of the exceedances that we've seen recently in the region. It's not a problem that's specific to one area. We're really finding this all across the coalition. And then zooming in a little closer to this area, you can see some of the exceedances that we've found nearby. Okay, so kind of stepping back and thinking how are pyrethroids, how are these chemicals, how are these nutrients getting into the waterways? I'm sure this is information that you're well aware of, but it's probably one of two things. It's either coming from runoff or from spray drift. Runoff, it could be irrigation runoff, it could be stormwater runoff. Honestly, that's probably not the biggest culprit of what we're seeing. It's probably not really as much of an issue now as it might have been in the past. It's really probably mostly coming from spray drift. So just a quick reminder of just some general best management practices. Again, I'm sure this is information you're already well aware of, but just wanted to remind you, try to avoid perimeter sprays when there's a hard surface and it's more likely that you'll get runoff into waterways. Be careful when you're applying near bodies of water or when you're applying near a drain that's going to run off into bodies of water. Try to avoid runoff when possible and apply only when you need to. And this last one, avoid application for the rainy season, but I'm also going to add be aware of when it's windy, right? When it's more likely to have spray drift. And I want to emphasize this because, again, some of these detections, these exceedances, they're really small. So a small change in a practice could mean a really big impact. It could take us from having an exceedance to not having an exceedance. So just these small little things could end up making a really big difference with what we're finding in the water. And then I believe there was a question. Yeah, so the question was who, essentially kind of comes back to who has to fill out reports when pesticides and chemicals are being sprayed. And it's not just agriculture that has to fill out these pesticide application reports. Yeah. So there's a couple points in that. One is just pointing out that it's probably likely that pyrethroid applications will go up over the next 2 years because it's a cheaper chemical and it's useful. And the other kind of point on that was just pyrethroids don't necessarily have a really long life expectancy in the water that they can degrade, and they don't stick around for forever. So what does that mean for toxicity in the water? I think the question really comes back to what do you define as toxicity, right? So waters can be, you can think about it from a human health perspective. What does that mean for human health, right? But a lot of what the requirements come back to, it's not just about human health, it's also about aquatic health. Even if it's not something that would be harmful at the human health level, if it's deemed a problem for the things that live in the water, like the algae, then that is considered toxicity. So again, the way that these requirements make us look at this information is from kind of a broader perspective, and we have to consider things like the impact on the things that live in the water. This is the end, so any questions? Yeah. The question is if SGMA is going to affect the workings of the coalition at all. I don't want to say no, not at all, but in reality, they're kind of covering different things. A lot of what we look at when we're doing our groundwater quality trend monitoring is, is the groundwater quality. Sigma definitely has a component where they have to look at groundwater quality. A lot of it is also, though, really looking at quantity of groundwater. But we do try to work together when possible. So if we were to go back to that map with the groundwater wells that we're using for the network, those observation wells, those 12 observation wells, we double dip. Those are also used to meet Sigma requirements. So we share the cost of monitoring, and we share the data. So indirectly, they kind of, things tie together. We find ways where we can have efficiencies because, again, a lot of different requirements to kind of control the same thing at the end of the day, right? A lot of different programs that are concerned about groundwater. And so it's not affecting you directly, but there are some opportunities where the coalition can collaborate with these other groups to try to reduce costs and make sure everyone's meeting the requirements as efficiently as possible. Yeah. Okay. There are some things that the county is required to do, but that's separate from the coalition. Yes. So the question was, how do we know what sites to go to, or what sites are we adding when we have to monitor additional sites when we find pyrethroid exceedances? And so it kind of comes back to all of the sites are really, we've already determined the different possible sites. So we're not adding new sites to monitor. We're deciding which of those sites we think would help give us a more clear understanding of what we're finding in the area. And that definitely oftentimes means going upstream. All right, well, we'll stick around after the presentation. If you want to come up and ask a question directly, you're welcome to do so. Thank you so much for joining us today.